Our next speaker is Laura Dunham. Laura is an associate professor and chair of the entrepreneurship department within the Schultz School of Entrepreneurship at University of St. Thomas. She joined St. Thomas in 2003 from the University of Virginia, where she earned her PhD and MBA from the Dunham Graduate School of Business. She teaches undergraduate, graduate, and executive programs on innovation and entrepreneurship strategy. Her research focuses on the managerial and ethical challenges involved in innovation and new business startup and development. Prior to her doctoral studies, Dr. Dunham worked as a management consultant in the strategy division of Renaissance Worldwide, helping clients such as Oracle, IBM, Lucent, and GTE to identify, evaluate, and develop new growth initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Laura Dunham. Sort of a pacer, so I can't stay behind the podium. Well, thank you very much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here to talk about this topic, which is very near and dear to my heart. I speak to a lot of executives and managers, needless to say, about innovation, and they have sort of a love-hate relationship with it. They think it's interesting, they know it's important, but it's hard, it's challenging. And one of the reasons it's challenging is because innovation sort of follows a set of rules and principles that often feel very counterintuitive to us, that sort of violate our understandings of what it means to be a smart business person, a smart, rational business person. But as it turns out, in order to be an effective innovator, we have to be able to embrace the counterintuitive nature of this approach, and we have to build processes and structures and systems that embrace it as well. So today what I wanted to do is to share with you a couple of those counterintuitive rules of innovation, as well as some best practices in innovation management that embrace that. So the first rule is this. If you wish to delight your customer with true innovation, don't ask them what they want. Now, this seems to violate everything that we know and hold dear about this notion of customer centricity and incorporating the voice of the customer in everything we do. And I'm not saying we never ask our customer. Of course we have to ask our customer, how are we doing? What can we do better? But what that's going to do is help us sort of fine-tune what we're doing. It's going to allow us to make incremental improvements. But it's not going to get us to true innovation. And the reason why is because your customer is operating under the same constraints, the same sort of mental frameworks that you are when you think of your product or service category. So if you say to them, what do you want? They're going to say, well, I want something that looks a lot like what I have now, maybe a little more of this and a little less of that. And usually a little less has to do with the price point, right? Because, after all, I think Henry Ford summed it up pretty well when he said, if I listened to my customers, I would have built a faster horse. So in order to innovate, we have to actually engage in really different processes and tools. And one of the things we've discovered is we have to get much more comfortable as business people operating up at the more sort of broad, exploratory, messy, qualitative area in terms of kinds of research approaches that we take if we want to gain some new insights about our customers that can lead to some new, better solutions. So, remember, the goal here as innovators is to find unmet needs. That is our goal, right? That's where the gold is. So if you sort of plotted customer needs along a spectrum, you start at the most surface, and the most obvious is what we call explicit needs. And those are the needs that the customer can tell you right out. You want my business, give me A, B, C, right? They know they can ask for them. At a deeper level are what we call tacit needs. And those are the needs that customers won't tell you about, but they're experiencing. They're experiencing them, but they've gotten used to them. They've come to expect them. They've perhaps developed some workarounds around them. So it's not the sort of thing they'd ever consider complaining to you about, right? And at a deeper level yet are what we call latent needs.
And a great example of a latent need is 10 years ago, the latent need I had for this small digital device that I carry with me everywhere, that I talk into, that I communicate through email, that I entertain myself with, that I get information from my smartphone, right? 10 years ago, I couldn't begin to articulate to you what I could use that product for. So, how do we find explicit needs? Well, if we want to understand our customers' explicit needs, we ask them, right? They can tell us. But the problem is they're also telling your competitors. So it doesn't get us too far ahead, right? Or too far into the area of real innovation. If we want to get to their tacit needs, then we need to go into the field and we need to observe them. We need to observe them trying to solve the problem that our product or service solves for them. And we need to get really good at doing kinds of open-ended interviewing that has them giving us rich details about their experiences. And if we want to find those latent needs, then we have to make. We have to build prototypes. We have to put rough prototypes in the hands of customers and see what they do with them. So let me give you an example. And I have an example is always worth 1,000 words. So kitchenwares manufacturer some years back was trying to figure out how to innovate, of all things, the measuring cup. And that would seem to defy innovation, right? And of course, the first thing they did was they talked to their customers. What do you want? And they looked at it and they said, well, maybe, I don't know, bigger numbers or different shaped handle or whatever. And of course, that was okay, but it really wasn't terribly innovative. And what they ended up doing was going into customers' kitchens. And what did they see when they watched people using the measuring cup? Customers do something like this. They pour ingredients in, they look at it, that's not right, they get it level. No. Pour it out, look at it again, make sure it's level. They called this the measuring cup dance. And it's not something anybody ever complained about because, we're all just kind of used to doing it, we've accepted it, right? So, what this company called OXO came up with was this product. Any of you familiar with this product? I'll show you another picture of it here. Oh, I don't have quite enough hands for everything I'm doing. So that's your typical measuring cup, and that's the OXO measuring cup. So what happens when you use the OXO measuring cup? You can see what you need to measure, stick it down, you pour, you see exactly where you are, done. It's accurate, it's easy, right? Now, just out of curiosity, what would you suppose the cost of this cup is to produce? Any engineers out there?
12 cents.
Maybe 12 cents. What do you suppose the cost to produce this one is?
12 cents.
Maybe 15, right? What do you suppose this one sells for at Target? $2. Bought this one for $2. What do you suppose this one sells for? 8. 4 times the price. That's the innovation premium, right? You create something that delights your customer, that meets a need, and you're the only one. And you can charge $8 for that. And yes, I have 2 of them too, because that is lovely. Okay, now. All right, so very different kinds of approaches to learning about customers. Which brings us to rule number 2. We are also, all of us, creative people, capable of bringing innovation to fruition. So these tools are not just for the people in the marketing department or R&D, they're for all of us to understand our customers better. And as it turns out, interestingly, all of us are very capable of bringing that kind of creative insight to our jobs. And why is that important? Well, I think, for one thing, let's step back and let's define innovation. And this is about as good a definition as I've come across. What is innovation? Innovation is about applying creativity to making a new match between a need and a solution. So your creativity can be around finding an interesting problem, frustration, unmet need for your customer, or it can be around serving a need you're already serving but with a better, more innovative solution, right? But But whether you're working on the need or whether you're working on the solution, the point is you got to be creative and you got to bring creativity to it. And this is where a lot of business people get a little bit nervous and say, well, I'm that sort of analytical, linear brain kind of person. I'm not one of those weird creative types, right? Well, let me tell you about an interesting piece of research that was done a number of decades back, from which we learned that we're all of us born highly creative. A guy named George Land, who's an educational psychologist, he took an instrument, a research instrument that had been developed by NASA in order to identify scientists who were most innovative, most creative. It was highly reliable, very valid instrument, and he adapted it for kids. And he gave this, this test to a cohort of 5-year-olds, to 1,600 5-year-olds. And then he tested them again, the same children, at age 10, and then he tested them again at age 15. At age 5, what percentage of them do you think tested as very or extremely creative? What percent? 100%. 98%. What do you think that looked like when they were 10? What percentage of them were very or extremely? You're optimistic. 30%. And by the time they were 15, do you dare guess? It was 12%. He gave this test to a random samples of adults, and he discovered among the adult population 2%. What we've concluded, he wrote, is that non-creative behavior is learned. We don't need to learn to be creative. We are creative. We need to unlearn some things that we have learned, that take that away from us. So what are some of the inhibitors of creativity that have led some of us to fall into that 98% by the time we're adults? Well, number one is habits. Habits are wonderful things. They make life a lot more efficient for us, right? You know, when I drive my car, I don't actually have to think about the 600 different operations I have to do, right? They become habits. The problem with habits is that I stop noticing things, right? When I have routines, when I have accepted wisdoms, conventional wisdoms about the standard way we do things around here, I stop noticing. I stop noticing problems, opportunities to be creative, right? Fear. We're all afraid of being different, and we're all afraid of failing. And by definition, creativity says you have to get out there and say or do something that nobody else has done before. So we all become quite afraid. And then pressures to conform. You know, from the time we're very young, people that love us are trying to tell us, be this way. Our teachers are telling us, this is the right answer, right? So we start limiting ourselves. Well, the very good news is that research has also shown that people can recapture their creativity, right? There are tools that help us break through those habits, and we're starting to learn more and more about the kinds of organizational systems, structures, processes, cultural norms that help address fear and the pressures to conform, and that create companies like Apple and Google, and increasingly companies like GE and P&G that are adopting a lot of these practices. Rule number 3 is related. Creativity can be structured. So now you say, wow, okay, she tells me I can be creative, she tells me there's some tools out there, I can do this. Well, the good news is you can, there are tools, and it can be structured. One such process that we teach our students is something called design thinking. Are you familiar, any of you out there familiar with design thinking? So a few people, fabulous set of tools that start with going out, doing all kinds of exploratory ethnographic research with our customers for the purpose of really gaining empathy and understanding them, their lives, their problems, their frustrations, their wants and aspirations in very new ways. And that also has a number of different tools for doing that, and for bringing that stuff back and interpreting it and finding new and interesting insights about your customers, brainstorming solutions to the problems that have emerged from your research, and then very quickly, the critical part of this is prototyping. Taking your idea, putting together a real rough, quick, dirty prototype, getting it in front of the customers, getting feedback, refining, prototyping again. So that's just one set of tools that have been used effectively, not only in design boutiques, but at places like P&G, at places like GE, Intuit, to drive new insights, creative new insights about their customers and new products and services. I wanted to share an example. Can somebody click that link? Is that possible? The little house on the bottom?
Sure can.
So let me tell you before, if you can do that, that'd be great. Is that gonna work?
This designed to meet a lot of people's needs, like the RFID readers where they open the door. So you don't need to have the dexterity to use the key. You just hold up the key fob or your ID card and it allows you into the house. So you've got the mild genetic brain injury. You look at the flooring, they're help to guide people. You know, the accessible bathrooms, you have a tub and shower, so it feels like a normal bathroom. We have the technology closet in the master bedroom, place to charge your wheelchair, charge your prosthetic limbs, and store them all so the house doesn't look like a hospital and all that equipment is where it needs to be. In the kitchen, the sink can be either a stand-up sink or you can use it as a roll-up sink. The microwaves at an accessible level.
We really need a deep understanding of people who are going to be living inside these spaces.
We sort of see in some questions, try to find people that have different types of disabilities.
And understand what the people really need and turn those into possible design concepts and until we got to the point where there's just real, concrete, great ideas.
Through our research, we found that a lot of wounded warriors actually have trouble regulating their own temperatures. So by incorporating 12 different HVAC zones, the resident's able to tailor the temperature within their individual room without affecting the rest of the residents in the home.
The kitchens and bathrooms we designed here were designed not to feel like a hospital, very sterile. We have lots of natural light that gets into the house. They have energy efficient appliances, energy efficient HVAC systems. So there's lots of sustainable features that hopefully people don't even recognize. It just blends in with the home.
I love the home, it's beautiful. When you're in a wheelchair, the first thing you think about how to get around. And this alleviates all that worry.
For the variety of injuries and needs out there for accessibility, ultimately having the fundamentals there, having a single-story home, a plan that's easy to negotiate goes a long way.
You wonder why home buildings are like this. So nice to be able to turn a corner in a wheelchair. People don't realize.
To have an innovative, beautiful home like this for some of our wounded heroes is just tremendous.
I hope that this serves as a model, not only for homes in Fort Belvoir, but other homes across military facilities.
What are we doing to care for our soldiers and our service members who's given so much, sacrificed so much? You know, this is what we're doing.
I think anyone, injured or not, would love to live in a home.
So tools to help us more deeply understand our customers, their needs, and to craft solutions, products and services that are beautifully tailored to what they want, what they aspire to, and some of the challenges they face. So now we'll move on to the next. I think I've created some technical challenges. I'm just trying to remember what my next one. There's so many counterintuitive rules. I had to pick and choose among them. I think my next one, and I'll just go ahead and start on that because I know we've got limited time. Oh, here we go. Terrific. Thank you so much. Can I go ahead and move that ahead?
Yep.
Excellent. Maybe? You can't plan your way to innovation. Oh my goodness. This is really hard for business people. You know, the good news is business people are so good at business planning, right? And we are so good at the business school at training people to be fabulous business planners, to spend many months gathering data, you know, and mostly secondary data, maybe some primary, and building these tomes of plans that say, look, we know exactly who the customer is, what they want, how big this opportunity is going to be, the kind of investment that's required, the kind of return on investment therefore we're going to get, and here's all the steps and stages and strategies and tactics. We're really good at that. But the bad news is your business plan is always wrong when it comes to innovation, always. Because when you're doing something very new and very innovative, your business plan doesn't survive first contact with your customer. Right? You discover all the things you didn't know. Right? And why is that? And that's because of the challenge of uncertainty. I think you'll remember this fella, famous fella, once said, there are known things. There are things that we know. There are also known unknowns. That is to say, We know there are some things we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. He confused a lot of people with this, and people wondered if he was having a bit of a moment, right? But as it turns out, what he was talking about was the difference between what economists call risk and true uncertainty. Now, the future's never what we expect it to be. In the business world, we're very good at understanding risk and managing risk. But what risk really means is, based on any particular, perhaps strategic action I take, investment I make, product I deliver, I can probably identify what the likely outcomes are of that action. And I might even be able to apply probabilities to each of those actions. And so I can do all my great decision tree analysis. And so for most actions that I take, I can say, here's the expected value. But when you're an innovator, when you're bringing something radically new to market, you can't do that. You might not even be able to identify the possible outcomes, much less apply any probabilities. Because you are truly operating in an area of true uncertainty, of unknown unknown. So how does an entrepreneur manage that? They can't cling to their little business plan. Well, it's about action. And it's about action that's built around prototyping, incorporating customer feedback early on. We talk about the build, measure, learn cycle that innovators have to get very comfortable engaging in over and over again. So I've done my design thinking. I have what I think is a fabulous solution. I'm going to prototype it super cheap, super fast. I'm going to get it in front of my customers. I'm going to hear what they say. Based on what I've learned from them, I'm going to refine. I'm going to prototype again. I'm going to go back out into the market. And essentially, I'm going to engage in action. I'm going to forget that damn business plan. I'm going to learn by creating data, not pretending data's out there, but actually talking to my customers and learning. Right? So it's all about taking action, but taking action really quick and dirty with fast prototyping. And this brings us to the fifth and final that I'll share with you today, which is, so if you want to succeed at innovation, you have to fail. And there's a connection between this one and the first one. But that is not the sort of thing that we as business people like hearing. How many of you like to fail? Anybody out there really like to enjoy? Okay. There's one hearty soul who likes to fail. Why is failure so important to innovation? It's where you really learn, right? You learn a lot, but there's even more to it. Companies that are best in class in innovation actually have quotas. They say at this stage of the process, 40% of your concepts had better fail. Had better fail, right? Why the heck is that? Because if you're innovating and your ideas aren't failing, you're not innovating, right? Failure is a sign you really are pushing outside the norms and heading into new space, right? So, IDEO says fail early, fail often in order to succeed sooner. And the way you do that is instead of spending millions of dollars developing a product nobody loves based on a business plan that's going to be growing, you start small and you prototype and you do it quickly and cheaply. And that saves you money, lets you fail and learn fast and cheap. As Tom Watson, founder of IBM once put it, the way to succeed is to double your failure rate. Okay, so 5 and 2 rules and some best practices that companies are engaging in. Innovation is about change. Change is challenging. But all of us have to get better realizing that some of the rules of thumb that we've operated on all of our lives, actually, we have to challenge them. So, anyway, I think that's time. Thank you very much.